Everyone here tonight is reading. If you're not, well, again. I'm Star. This is Helicon West. This is the first one of the spring 2020 season. So this is a pretty big deal. And since it's all open mic, we can just goof off and do what we decide. If you want to switch around, that's great too. If you want to come up and do jumping jacks or something. Yeah, but you have your jeans on. You can't do the splits tonight. Okay. So thank you to the Logan Library and Kat for bringing us together tonight. And thank you everybody for being here. We're so excited to see you again. It's another season. I see more people I can put on the list to read. They're streaming in the door as we speak. Are there other things to give? Does anybody have an announcement? No? Britt, are you on the list? Okay. Well then, we'll start forthwith. Yeah, I'll be putting more people on the list.
Yes, you will. I have stuff.
Okay,
Yes.
You're on the list.
Okay.
I'll decide where to fit you in. No, I'll just hand it to you and you can put yourself anywhere. That be all right? Okay. We are starting with Jay, and then we'll go to Aaron, Tim, and then Britt, and then Asher. So we'll go 4 in a row. Jay, Aaron, Britt, Asher. Come up as in order. Yay, Jay!
Hello.
I love you, Jay.
Hello. So this is just a short poem that I wrote that's about not being able to sleep, because that happens sometimes. It's called Counting Sheep. 11 p.m. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Time for bed, says the clock. 12 a.m. Cuckoo, cuckoo. 12 times fast. The clock strikes midnight at last, but an eternity has already passed. 1 a.m. Where might the Sandman be? Will he ever come for me? How I long to become sleepy. 2 a.m. Tossing and turning, thoughts in my head are churning, darkness, demise, so discerning. 3 a.m. The moon pierced through my window, lighting my room up like the disco. 4 a.m. My mind will not sort the matter, so my thoughts continue to scatter. 5 a.m. My eyelids start to have a heavy feel. Maybe I can go to sleep for real. Any form of slumber would be ideal. 6 a.m. To a dream I plead before. May I have a little snore? A little sleep is all I ask for. 7 a.m. Beep, 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 beep. I never went to sleep. Maybe I should have counted sheep.
Hi. I'm gonna, ow, shocked me. Okay. Okay, hi. Okay, so I'm reading 2 poems. One I wrote, one my husband wrote. There's no connection between the two. They're just whatever. That's how I roll. Okay, so here's a poem by Isaac Timm. It's called The City. In the back of the class, protected behind my bangs, I draw a city. Head down, geography film droning on. Bolivia produces 20% of all the world's bauxite, the main source of aluminum, named after the Beau France. I draw the line of a harbor, the blunt teeth of wood docks, then a line to the north, a rocky hill whose fort surveys smoke haze, murmuring streets, thronged with growling wolfmen and pale-eyed elves, draped with silk of the purest kind, that once glowed between the mulberry trees as harvesters passed under branches with their paper lanterns. Her hair, spun copper, falls over pictures of ruins in her textbook. Through merchant stalls, the elves pass with ivory hands, fairy gold and silver sleeves shining, runes of their secret art. Songs that were sung in wooded places, never heard by the ears of men. She smiles at a secret, whisking a sun-blessed lock from her ear. A curved wall that follows the line that runs from her hairline down her bare shoulder to the edge of her cranberry blouse, This wall holds the noble palaces away from the roiling masses of the bazaar. Under the high silver gate, guarded by faceless men whose helmets make them crows, runs the great wide avenue, bordered by golden-leafed trees whose white blossoms smell of her honey-scented perfume. The classroom bursts with escaping sound as students pour through doors to capture lunch. Flirtations, heat of bodies, and shocking brief touches of bare skin. She passes my desk, rolling her eyes. D&D? And what is this now? A map? I blink, then flatly, this is Caliban, a city I drew. Okay, this poem's written by me, so yay. Okay. Again, no connection to the previous poem. Okay, all right. This is called Calls from Home. My roommate gets a call from her mother every evening before dinner. She gets an update on her cats and her little brothers. Her mother always asks about her classes. My mother calls at 2 a.m. She is in the bedroom of my sister's rented trailer, thick hair a tangle. Leaned back against the closet door, a sticker of the Sacred Heart over her shoulder. She is leaving Las Vegas. Like the Nicolas Cage character, she wants to drink herself to death. She has visions of herself dressed in white, serene in a rosewood casket, as I offer her an indulgence, sing her to the gates of glory, family weep. She asks me if I remember the songs for her funeral. I do. When I was 14, my mother would drink first beer, then whiskey after work. As we listened to music, she would tell me what songs I should sing for her when she died. She made me practice Heaven Can Wait and Tequila Sunrise until I got them just right. You are the only one who would do this for me. I tell her I remember, soothe her into hanging up before she starts talking about her father, my father. I creep back to my bed humming Tequila Sunrise. Thank you.
I pulled the mic down and just sniff. Good evening. I'm Brittney. Weirdly enough, my thesis has been coming along. I'm graduating. Yeah. It's weird. I'm graduating in May, and I'm doing a creative thesis, which means it's a poetry collection of mine. So I have, thank God for my poetry group, Poetry at 3, for my different classes and my writing groups up on campus and off campus as well. I just get to abuse the system and get my thesis work done while having fun, and it's wonderful. So I brought a couple of poems tonight. This first one is titled Exposition. Before my stepfather came in the front door, paid me in dimes to polish his brown leather shoes, there was a storybook between my legs I knew only a boy could read. I pulled one in the closet of the playroom and asked him to see, to lick each one of my 6-year-old teeth, his tongue a metal shock like a fat copper fish. I pulled the little boy over me like a son, like a god, made him lash me with rope to the swing set pole, practiced for my future, years before my stepfather asked my hungry mother to dance. I already knew about the room inside me for his heart beating against the zipper's leash. And if that one wasn't cheery enough, my second one is titled, Does My Brother Dream of Showers? My sister is my brother now. Out of the stuffed rabbit's hide, he pulls a flashlight, a marker, a knife, arterial threads dangling. I am drunk. Think about when he was she and she was 8 years old. At a Build-A-Bear outside Salt Lake, My little sister picked the rabbit's limp hide, little pelt on a hook. Together we filled it with white stuffing. My sister kissed her wishes into a tiny red heart, slipped it inside before running fat thread up the rabbit's backside. I am 24 and not blacked out yet. My sister is my brother now, and he is now 14. He brings the rabbit to our sleepover, matted with age and love and drool. My brother wears a girdle to keep the budding breasts in. When I was 14, I also hid my body inside XL hoodies, boot-cut jeans. When I pass out, I dream of my brother's father following me into the shower again. There is a red pocket knife where the little rabbit heart used to be. Thank you.
So I did this crazy thing where I self-published a novella this week. So I'm reading a snippet from that, and I apologize in advance because I write romance, so it's a little bit sexy.
Oh,
And by a little bit, I mean people were disappointed last time that I didn't read anything sexy. So we said we weren't doing this on campus while we had campers in our cabin. We said it before we left Niagara. We say it again Monday morning as we kiss in the shower before making our way to collect the newest round of campers. We said it yesterday as I shimmied naked through our shared bathroom to shut off the screaming alarm. We said it in the morning before when Maddie had me caged between his body and the shower wall, trailing kisses down to my cock. The alarm still has half an hour when Maddie rolls me over this morning. He presses a kiss behind my ear as he drags his dick along my crease. I swear, he says, this is the last time we do this. I mumble an assent into the pillow and arrange and angle my hips back. His cock changes position and his tip is sliding along my rim now. He groans into my neck and then pushes deep with a long, smooth stroke. I moan when Maddie clamps a hand over my mouth. I only get to do this as long as you stay quiet, he says. I nod as I press my hips back against his next thrust. I bury my face into the pillow. Maddie digs his fingers into my hips and sets a furious pace composed of sharp jerks of his hips and a firm grip pulling me closer against his body. He nips at the hinge of my jaw and sucks bruises across my collarbones before telling me I can come. As he finishes, he muffles his face between my shoulder blades and pants into my sweaty flesh. Jesus Christ, he says as he rolls off me and spreads out across the narrow bed on his back. I turn into his chest and muster weak mules of assent.
Pretty steamy. Try anyone to top that. Next we have Ron Jensen, then Shaun, then Terysa.
It's been welcome. 7/20/2019. Another birthday of my mother. But this is one. It's like no other. For my niece's getting married that day in the fishing temple, just a ways away. With my mother and niece in their own way, have made this a special day. It's been welcome my family. For years I was single and all alone. Without a wife, or tell my own. Now I have a wife and stepdaughters too. The best of my life, and wasting on a few. I want to be a good head of the house. To be a great leader, and a killing spouse. They're also great to accept me, and glad to be a part of the family. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna read two poems tonight, which is not normal for me, but
I like it.
The first one I wrote a year ago, and I need to say that because things are different than what's happening in the poem, but I just like the poem. So the first one is called Blessed. It starts with the quote, "If you love two people at the same time, choose the second, because if you really love the first one, you wouldn't have fallen for the second," and that quote is by Johnny Depp. But Johnny Depp's fist screamed that I shouldn't take his word on love. The shot glass lingers on the countertop the night before, when unknown bodies leaned too close, hands, fingers, inches away. Husband asks me, morning after, if I have deranged ghosts, whispering, "Go. It's fine if I do, we'll be fine." Hands slide down husband's body, 3 years known. Fingers brushing indent between hip and thigh, reassurances that I'll stay because I love him, because I worry he'll shatter, like hot glass plunged into ice. And then the second one I wrote at the Community Writing Center on the Wayland Hands prompt. And the Wayland Hand is folklore that has been collected. So it starts with another quote, and the quote is, "Female roots of leaf carried as amulet to enhance seductive power of males," and that's just some folklore that exists in the Wayland Hand collection. I recognize her by her full leaves. Among plants, she is allowed to grow robust, larger than the males, blooming. She has been made for me. I inhabit this body with penis, with power of taking. Her roots are not hers, but mine to carry, to claim, to wear as an amulet. I steal her ability to feed, pry roots away from full-bodied foliage. Since Adam, I have been named steward, righteous lord of earth, entitled to name, to claim, to consume. All in the name of multiply, replenish the earth. Thank you.
Start before I forget. Riley said that she wanted to read. Will you add her to the? She found a poem, huh? Didn't you? So Riley asked me, just me personally, she asked me to tell you to add her. I have a way. I have two to read. This first one is new, brand new. New-ish, new this year. It's called Dishes. Dishes in the morning, weight scattered. A bowl on the low black coffee table, stained before my time. A yard sale find. A tumbler with crumbs somehow stuck inside, hides under a book in our library. 2 small plates, rimmed in thin tan paint, sit patiently in the sink. Rule followers. I gather them while you sleep, wash them quiet in the yellow sink, wash it too, and make coffee, more dishes to wash, plus the quick frisk of the coffee machine. I sit with the dishes, waiting and drip drying on a soft blue kitchen towel, respectively. And then at our poetry group this week, Isaac brought something that was 10 years old, and so then we were talking about how fun it would be if we all read something that was 10 years old, which would place me as a senior in high school, so I apologize, but I brought one. It's called, somewhat appropriately, it's called After the First Snowfall, and I'm sorry.
Is that part of the title?
It's not. That's 10 years of subtext. Yep, it snowed. And yep, you're gonna hear a lot of cliche crap poetry about the majestic changing of the seasons and the glistening of winter magic that coats courageous Mother Earth. Bullshit. Don't get me wrong, I like snow fine. I'm just sick of all the hype. Every poem I read about snow falling brings me one check closer to a down payment on a house in Australia. No one writes about the ugly mud mush that gathers in the gutter to ruin your overpriced furry boots the second you step out of your car. Nobody wants to read a poem about dry, cracked winter skin. The glow of powdery harmony is for some reason more appealing, even the 12,000th time around. I want to talk about the irony of the wide-eyed chubby kid eating fistfuls of snow that's polluted by his family's residual footprint. I wish somebody would point out to the rest of the world that snow is freezing. I didn't write this, but I would now. Fucking cold. And not cold in the pink-tinged faces greet frosty wind like a refreshingly profound old friend kind of way. Real snow is cold and the snot runs down my face while I slip and fall on my ass in the middle of the nostalgically elegant winter road kind of way. The sadistic clouds who dump frozen water on us deserve to get blown into vacuums by that cruel bitch, the wind. I guess if I moved to Australia, I'd have to endure 12,000 poems about the silent grace of the kangaroo. If it storms again soon, I may take my chances.
Well, we want more out of that book next time. Especially the ad-lib part. Oh, this is so good. It's going too fast, huh? I'm going to try to slow it down. What should I do to slow it down? I don't think I can. These are good.
Musical
Jordan.
interlude,
What?
Star. Musical interlude. Somebody sing something.
Ready, go. That thing. Jordan. And then Riley. And then Adrian.
Hello, I'm Jordan, and I'm gonna read some prose if that's all right. I'm gonna read a scene from an essay I recently wrote, and just a little bit of context. So this is my braided essay, and for it, Jesse and I decided to go canoeing in search of a swan, and it was wonderful. And I still have mud on my shoes from it. So, anyway, so I'm gonna read a scene from that specific strand. I knew from the moment I first saw the Cutler Marsh that I wouldn't see a swan. The water appeared too empty, the birds too small. I had felt the loss inside of me. Before coming, I had been imagining the thousands of swans that the Bear River Bird Migratory Refuge told me flew over the area each year. I had almost entirely put off listening to the sound of the tundra swan's call so that the first time I heard it, it would be in person. I know now that the swan I had seen in the air was not a swan at all. We canoe towards nothing. There is no route, no real path to guide us. I change the side I paddle on every half a dozen strokes or so, keep us from veering too far to one side of the marsh. I begin to notice the flocks of birds flying in the sky ahead of us, or maybe they have only just begun. There is a word for that, but I can't think what it is, says Jesse, referring to the motion of the flock. I watch the birds lift from the water before scattering, a loud vibration of wings. I can hear their sound, soft, humming like a bee or a ringing bell. Then in unison, the birds expand. They look like breath. And they inhale too, as real as the inhales I take from the marsh below. Our canoe rotates on the water, both of our paddles in our laps, necks arch in an inverted bow. From the mass of birds, two groups splinter apart. I keep my eyes trained on one. The birds flapped, swift repetitions overhead, then nothing, floating. Then back to flapping again. I watch as they move separately from each other, yet somehow together. They are not in a straight line or an even spacing, but they are following the same wind, moving instinctually. I don't know if they all have the same clear idea of where they are flying, what landmark they are searching for, but they look beautiful trying to get there. Eventually, they fly away from the marsh, wings fade from black to gray to the color of the clouds. For the moments where black birds fly over my head, I don't need to look for swans.
Hi, I'm Riley. Thanks, Terysa. I needed that push. So I'm reading a poem called Self-Sermon. Okay. I've never felt anything itchier than the worn upholstery of a church pew, sitting shoulder to shoulder with brothers and sisters, the universe's bastard child, realizing that maybe God created us, but we are made by the people around us. Are all gods the same God? One being that gets sick of its ancient identity just like its children do, so it hits the road, smokes a blunt, and becomes the being it wants to be whenever wind hits? Shit, that would tempt me too. If we're God's kids, that means sex. And maybe it's spiritual sex, which sounds promising. And I bet he's good, like eons of practice. I wonder if any of us were unplanned, an accident of some spiritual fuckery. Death and love don't discriminate between sinners and saints. They must be God's siblings. An only child could never be that well adjusted. Death and love are aunts and uncles who love us unconditionally, so they devour us, consume us, spit us back into something we can't even recognize, because that's what family does. Of course, there could be nothing, and maybe that's what I'm praying for. Some hysterical irony for our eternal egotism. We cease to matter, except to the living who are probably too concerned with themselves anyway. So if there's something or nothing, we put our heads down, we crawl into the trenches together, and share the butt end of our last cigarette. Thank you.
Heyo, Adrian here, and I'm going to be reading a poem today. No, I don't know what you expected me to do. That's what I'm going to do. And this one's cool because it's one of the ones about my hometown that I'm doing. And I wrote it over the break, so it's pretty recent. So that's cool. All right, it's called Cougar Winter. We have a mountain lion skin Dad killed when he was 4 years younger than I am, upstairs, draped over a chair. When I was 5, it hung halfway up the wall in the living room, 4 clawed feet stretched from ceiling to wainscoting, long tail pointed to where the 2 walls meet. Back when the living room had carpet, I would stand atop the chair beneath to reach the detachable rubber tongue. I would wrestle from behind its teeth, careful to avoid the whiskers like long black quills Dad would warn me not to break. When we took it down, the small half-circle sections of the wood ceiling border where the feet had been showed original stark orange set around time-faded beige, uncovering 2 of the border's recently painted black flowers, shaded their original green. Dad shot it down south in Kanab, chasing it in and out of the sandstone canyon, watching its smooth cat haunches disappear under the edges of the ground below the ledges without sound. Now, Dad says, there's been a population explosion, hundreds in the hills and forests above town, and the mountain to the east. None there when he was a boy. This year, on the days following Christmas, 3 people, including Dad's old business partner and hunting buddy, and his son, each shot a cougar, all females, much smaller than his. One up New Canyon past the fountain, where we cut Christmas trees, one up Monty by the Narrows, the last up the forks of Big Creek and Randolph Creek, all of them less than a 20-minute drive. After seeing each cat brought into his mechanic shop in the back of a pickup or laid on pallet board to bleed out on the floor before taking to tan after church, Dad took pictures with his new phone and then came home to dig through flower-covered photo albums from the 80s and find the original pictures of the cougar he'd killed. The quota set by Fish and Game grants 25 permits to mark the population down in the north half of the state. Mom doesn't like to hear about them getting killed, but Dad says that they don't tell you about all the fawns that will live next year because of the hunt if the winter doesn't kill them first. A few days later, Dad got a picture on his new phone of a cougar killed along the Crawford by a guy from down in the city who had tracked it from on top of the mountain and ran after it on foot down a 100-yard slope. He's a real Iron Man, Dad says, his feet skeletal and veined, red outline of sock, as he examines the picture on the couch with excited long phone finger strokes. When Dad took his cougar into the city to get a rug made, the taxidermist removed the skull, and when Dad came back to get the skull when the rug was done, the man said he had lost it with a shrug, a wave of his gloved hands, a small, shallow look to the left, an apparent disinterest in leaving the counter and going into the back to check. We look through the dark, cobweb dust closet for the pictures. Then, when nothing turns up, Dad cleans out his reloading bench by the washing machine, leaving organized piles of arrowhead shards, elk ivory, pocket watches, bolts, and screws, but no pictures. We think maybe they're upstairs, under the skin or under the chair. They're not there. Dad comes up on New Year's Eve to check, wants to lay out the skin and measure it, examines the head, feels its long, fragile whiskers, walks back down. Once up at Chuck's, after hunting season was over, Dad and I, while walking out of a grove of trees, came across a big buck laying off the road under a new layer of snow, killed by a mother cougar and 2 kittens, come down the hill off of Browns to the corner of left hand, body only a cavity, splintered, shattered splinters of pink skull sticking out of the face. They eat the nose first, then the hide, then the shoulders, then the rib meat. They never touch the ass end, and they never turn the carcass over to eat the other side before they go out and get another one. We stood around for a few minutes, looking, and I kept checking the tree line and behind bushes of that bright morning, and thought to myself that the 3 of them could be anywhere. The day before Dad's birthday, a tom is killed, first one he knows of, by a guy we'd seen out on the reservoir ice fishing a week earlier, who said he'd been trying to kill one for the past 3 years. By Mom's count, that makes 11, including the 5 Dad killed in our valley that we know of. 5 pictures, 3 holding the cats like muscled rag dolls, 2 of those with hunting dogs baying in the background, 1 in the truck bed, 1 on the floor, saved on Dad's phone after I showed him the save button. Bows work better, aim at heart and lungs. Guns aren't working as well, Dad says, and only a few people have used dogs. We look down at his mechanic shop for the pictures, where he remembers them stashed in an old soda crate, kept there for bragging rights, but our search turns up nothing on the empty wall of shelves, by the clanking air compressor, where a leak from a metal roof drips onto the couch. After I go back to college, Dad takes everyone up to the skin and lays it out on the floor for our dogs to examine, our small Yorkie cross, dwarfed by the fanged head. Then Dad throws it up to wear as a cape, but says the dust is choking him down by the time pictures are taken. Then he measures from tip of tail to nape of neck, 8 foot, 2 inches. I asked Dad why he doesn't call them mountain lions. He says cougar is easier to say, indicative of a time when a lot was easier, when running down mountains was easier, when moments lasted longer, when the pictures one took didn't matter as much.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when it was easier. That's true. Does anyone else? He's on there.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Don't worry,
Shaun
we've got
sitting
it.
behind you.
Yeah, they've been pointing at you since the moment you walked in. Could you tell? Was your back burning? Don't worry. I'm saving it.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Sensitive.
Let's see. I think we'll have Anne, and then Lauren, and then Kayleen. Come on.
So this is just a little poem that I recently wrote based on a childhood memory. The water inhales, its breath in... Let me start. The water inhales, its breath calling and rumbling 10-foot waves. We run down the slope of corn kernel sand, cooling in the twilight. We dance at the base of the churning water with our tiny freckled limbs coated in grit, and the waves begin to froth, to curl toward us, so we scream and dash for higher ground, our erratic footprints blasted away. Further down the shore, away from the waves, a couple lays entangled on a crumpled picnic blanket. She runs a finger along his jacket's shoulder, his hair behind the ear, the scar above his left eyebrow. She laughs as he tries to tame her windswept hair to clear her face, but then decides to just kiss her anyway. My pants are rolled at the knee, stiff with salt and wind. One of the belt loops has broken again, the thread from Mom's sewing kit dangling, frayed. We run to the waves, its honest breath pulling away from the shaking sand. We whoop and kick and laugh, for a moment untouchable.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Lauren. Give me.
Here.
Thank you for having me on the list and being here. I'm probably gonna read 2 poems. Okay. I just now decided I don't like this title, so I'm not gonna tell you the title of this poem. Okay.
You broke every tooth before I entangled my tongue and spit you out. Took my chapped lips years to even say your name, to stare at my naked body in the mirror without the taste of your clone and your cum, my shame. Now I heard you tried to kill yourself. I heard you dropped out of school. Got a job at McDonald's, reheating oil, sizzling fries. After work at night, you slap your car seats, leaving grease stains smearing the same spot you insisted on tasting, my elbows, my knees, my screams, my squishy pink putty leg in between. Or do you wait till you're home, knuckles desperate for drywall? Do you smoke weed into a newspaper, snort lines off your dresser, our initials scratched under your underwear drawer? Do you reach under your bed, push past old letters, teddy bears, finger a photo album, my 16-year-old hands crafted for you? Do you touch the delicate heart-shaped stickers, bright yellows and pinks promising, I love you, I love you, I love you? Last Christmas, I visited my parents, slept in my childhood room. I tossed and turned, pulled myself up. I grabbed my keys, jackets, and shoes. I checked every McDonald's. I was looking for you, I was looking for you. I was looking to purge myself clean of you. Okay. So I can't write happy things. Sorry about that. I tried to write you guys a funny poem right before this, and it was just all about farts, and it wasn't good. So maybe next time. This one's not as dreary. Okay, this one's called Crystal Hot Springs. Okay. Black sludge festers between white tiles. I teeter on the tops of sandals while stretching black pants over sticky, wet legs. I should have bothered with the towel, but instead I yank each ankle through fabric, puddled at my feet like balled-up fists. Inch by inch by inch, the hands of my pants sneak up my thighs when click, closing time. Standing in the dark, I fumble with my zipper when stale faces float to mind, how it ached to peel into another person's skin, pretend it was my own. To stuff soft layers that rolls in my belly as I bend, bare back, baby, untouched skin, it shouldn't be touched. Jamming myself, I am this person, I am this person. I would rather walk naked. Let the fat on my belly bounce and the cellulite stripes sing, I am so human, I am so human.
Wow. These are good, aren't they? All of these tonight are so good. We've got 3 more. Is anybody else going to read besides these three last readers? Okay, then we're going to have Philip, and then we'll have Star, and then we'll have Nate. Come on up.
So I created a poetic form while I was doing my MFA. I have a background in art, and I was interested in sometimes trying to translate visual forms into a written form. So I created double exposure poems, which are trying to replicate that feeling of two photos. You can see both photos, and then they sort of blur together. And as often happens, I worked a long time on sort of getting to this specific form, and then I read a poem very similar somewhere else, and I was like, I thought of that. But but anyway, so there are these two sides. So you can read the left side, it's a whole poem. You can read the right side, it's a whole poem. And then you can read across the lines. So I don't usually do them at readings because I feel like you need the visual, but also I like them and I want to read them. So, so what I'll do is I'll read. It's almost like, I mean, you'll hear both halves, and then you'll hear the blurring, and hopefully you just remember snatches from before and see how it goes together. This is about being a twin, and also our astrological sign is Gemini, so I had to write about that. So it's called Double Exposure Gemini. The moon peers through the indigo, just a sliver of light showing above the summer meadow. Invisible lines sketch blueprints of myths into the night. Like Gemini, near the horizon, its brightest stars, Castor and Pollux, half mortal, half holy. The shush of cricket song weaves through the windswept grass. The earth turns on its axis. The twins dip down behind the pines. Quiet, Mother says, as she shuts the door to our room, where my brother and I keep whispering across the gap between our beds, each word extending this story we've never finished. We press flashlights to our palms, rendered luminous, as if lit from within. We laugh into pillows, listen for footsteps. The ceiling fan's rhythmic whir lulls us to a drowsy silence, and we stay like that, breathing together in a kind of secret language. The moon peers through the indigo. Quiet, Mother says, just a sliver of light showing as she shuts the door to our room above the summer meadow, where my brother and I keep whispering. Invisible lines across the gap between our beds sketch blueprints of myths, each word extending into the night, this story we've never finished. Like Gemini, near the horizon, we press flashlights to our palms, its brightest stars, Castor and Pollux rendered luminous, as if lit from within, half mortal, half holy. We laugh into pillows, listen for footsteps. The shush of cricket song weaves the ceiling fan's rhythmic whir through the windswept grass, lulls us to a drowsy silence. The earth turns on its axis and we stay like that. The twins dip down, breathing together behind the pines in a kind of secret language.
Oh my God. That's so
Thank you. So this other one, the whole way here, I was like, have I read this one already? Have I not? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I haven't, but I decided I want to read it, so I'm reading it.
Good.
This one is also inspired by art, by a specific artist, Felix Gonzalez Torres. And he's known for a lot of different installations, probably most for piles of candy that are in the museum, and people can take one and it slowly sort of disappears. He does things with lights and things with clocks and a lot of sort of common objects that become kind of more poignant. The other is a billboard that you'll hear about in the beginning of the poem. and his works are usually untitled. So the poem title is Untitled, after Felix Gonzalez Torres. On a billboard in New York, a photo of an unmade bed. Depressions in each pillow suggest lovers who slept there. The artist and his partner, both gone now, taken by AIDS. It's morning, light falling, messy sheets as if the two just went to the kitchen for coffee and some of yesterday's cake, or grabbed their keys and disappeared into Manhattan. Snapshots of life, of dying too, even if we don't name it. I think of my own bed, unmade, proof my body existed for a night, another body beside me. I picture how the curtains lift and fall like our chests breathing. Clocks tick forward. All our coats are empty, arms hanging down, with nothing to hold but the closet's quiet dark. The things we make to fill an absence left behind are never the right size. Still, we try. A headstone, a poem, or, why not, candies wrapped in cellophane, a bright mound, the weight of a man's love, slumped on the museum floor. Ross, 175 pounds, dissolving as each patron takes a piece. Sweet Eucharist, remembrance carried on my tongue, mixed with the bitter aftertaste of our history. So many empty beds, books half read, water glasses with one last kiss on the rim. And this last poem that I'll read is about sort of my obsession with light, and it's called Through a Glass Brightly. Lo, the sun shows all the pollen sifting through the air like dust in a projector beam. I'm headed westward, my windshield already encrusted with a patina of insects and dirt, yet at the right slant, light changes grime to gold, a sudden alchemy. Hazy galaxies cross the glass, the road overlaid with a cosmos so bright it's blinding. But why make a heaven of it? Why do I find stars in the daytime, every cluster a constellation, a sign? The blaze will soon die down. Even a shift in direction would end the effect, just dust after all. Still, I seek what else to call it, to detail each variety of light. Like Jacob wrestling the angel until dawn, asking who he was, I turn the image over and over in my mind, long after the sun has set and the desert cools to indigo. I remember how the story ends. The luminous messenger stayed a stranger, while Jacob left blessed, wounded, and renamed. Thank you.
Great. What's your name? Shane. That was really inspiring. In fact, someone else even came and signed up because the poetry in this room is just, wow. So I'll read 3. Far and long ago, our family drove the short distance of a pelican's flight from home to Bear Hollow, where Mother's 3x4 notebooks came out of her pocket at the end of the picnic dinner she packed for us, where after the watercress sandwiches and deviled eggs, we played along the grassy banks of Bear Creek. As she wrote, we didn't even notice. All those fragments, descriptions of wind thrown through the branches, her soft brown hair wisping as she wished her poems to life. When she goes, we still have her. We carry her words in our pockets. This one's a fragment of a poem that I've been working on for a long time, and I imagine my poetry group got really sick of it, and so I set it away for a long time. I dredged it up, and I'll read a little part of it to you now. And the poem is called Walking Out. Evenings, he would sit half senseless in the rust-orange lazy boy where their youngest daughter had stuck her chewing gum under the flap near the wood handle he gripped to make the chair lie back. At some point, he'd propel himself forward as the wife and kids laughed in the kitchen, but the whiskey had jellied his legs so they had time to scatter. The mother could grab her Walkman with the earbuds, run out the back door, and walk fast up the dark road toward the high school, onto the highway, her feet pounding, heart thudding, air cold in her lungs, and she walked to the beat of Def Leppard drumming, keeping hard to the edge. Cars passed, throwing light beams she could reach out and hang herself on. Once the slowing of headlights, county sheriff stopping. "Are you all right?" "Yes, I'm fine. I'm just walking. It's dark. It's a narrow road. Cars going fast. The canal running next to it. She could be hit," he says, thrown into deep water, not found for days. "I'm fine. I'm just walking." Nothing he can make her tell. No letting him drive her home, because home isn't there anymore, not where he rules from his orange chair. And when she turns around at last, all her breath lets out, lungs as wide as the love she used to have for him before he fell for that rusty chair, its headrest grease-stained from his thick hair, the armrests dark with sweat and Scotch whiskey. When she turns around, she knows he'll be asleep, and she can fall into the empty bed to lie flat on her back, feel her body settle in the sheets. Every time it comes to this, he rises from that chair and she heads out the door. Desire hollows us out and hollows us out, kills us and raises us up. Robert Hass. Spinning and spinning from black ice, car nearly airborne, slides to a stop in the smash of guardrail, engines silent but the mind screaming. Where? Which direction? More cars flinging off the bridge, flipping and toppling toward you, but somehow you start the motor and glide to the edge to a soft depression. Others getting out of their cars, wandering dazed from the tangle of metal, crack of glass, grinding thud of crash. These go on forever. You avoid bridges in winter, glaze of black ice, contraband in the glove pocket, addition to the terror of that first near disaster with a canine unit on the scene, yet the breath will catch and the heart will flop, whiplash with every near miss. Even on the road to old age, it comes back with the vengeance of memory. And aren't you glad? Because otherwise, haven't you yearned for excitement, for danger that lurks where you least imagine it, sailing along at 70, clear day, nothing on your mind except the going home, and whoosh, you're lifted like paper and string, too high for a landing. Thank you. We got us another reader before we have Nate, and that will be Shane. Come on up.
All right, so I wasn't actually planning on reading tonight and have not read anything out loud in probably 10 years. So we'll just run through two quick ones. that I like, and with hundreds of poems written down, that's not a common thing for me to say about most of them. So I wrote this one last year, trying to figure out where my life was and the things I was going through, and also wanting to write something more specifically about living on the spectrum. And this is called No Resolutions. Still singing with a stolen voice, still falling in love with strangers. Too many after midnights, manufacturing weather, pretending not to understand the languages of hunger. As if the flapping birds you call your hands don't thrum with excess and joy alike. As if you are not forever lost in these patterns, in the mystery of laughter. As if you are still not just a visitor to your own body. The next one's a bit more lighthearted. It's about my favorite visual artist, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and it is littered with references to his life, his death, his music, his art, and even the title itself is a reference. It's called Radiant Child. Who painted your blank face and clean slate with labels pasted primitive, shades which haunt while they still live? Who set your place with empty plate, father's bread, broken heart, then gone, last supper suffer at the Odeon? Perched on Mulholland, prophesied, to cry your death over fading California lights, to shift your island among many, to inject those tropic nights and never wake as the meridian. The lost can sing tragic repeats. The history we bleed, messages scrawled on city streets. The same old, some say insane, so sweet, and plaster your name gray while angels weep and color shrieks. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Your name.
Oh man, I love Basquiat. Have you seen the documentary?
Yes.
Yeah, that documentary made me not hate postmodernity. Yeah, so if y'all know me, you know I really love haiku. And I write a lot of haiku, and they're not your typical 5-7-5. They're kind of, when haiku came to the West, they discovered that, you could say significantly more in English syllables than you can in Japanese syllables, and so it actually doesn't translate as smoothly. And so none of them are 5-7-5, so if you start to have some sort of dogmatic crisis, then sorry. So yeah, I'll just read a handful of them and then a paragraph from an essay. So first one, suicide. I killed the man that killed me. Second one, behind barbed wire, a brown black calf nudges a no trespassing sign. Third one, rows of mountains become silhouettes behind curtains of rain. Fifth, a maw of lightning stilled the rain with a kiss as sharp as it was gone. I forgot where I was at, so this is the next one.
Go slower. Stop in between. These are so good. Settle down.
I'm nervous, but there's something kind of nice about getting nervous to come up and do your best to be honest.
I want a recording of Star saying, "Settle down." To myself.
Settle down. That's our ringtone. Settle down. It's probably applicable at almost every. Real quick though, tonight's been a really phenomenal night of reading. Oh my God. Logan is like a little poetry capital, and I don't think we notice it because we're in it so deeply. And it's really easy to be like, oh, inversion, but like Logan's a total poetry capital of the West, and it's pretty cool. Okay, my friend, I have known you for so long, and now I think it's time we drink. Next one. Fear is a boa constricting itself. Is it any wonder it's so hungry? Next one. Listen or not, the liquor store mystic sings, boy, don't trust the spirits. Next one. A firefly still beaming in last night's empty bottle of wine. Next one. A white stone sitting in a wine glass. I think of my grandmother. And then the final one before the paragraph. Maybe a haiku is like a little tiny paragraph. Shadows at dusk, the sun, a cellist, draws its bow. So the paragraph is also from an essay from the semester, and part of it was a braided essay as well. And the character that I chose to focus in on his name was Django Reinhardt, and he's one of history's greatest guitar players. And right when he was beginning to take off at 18, he had just been signed on to Europe's biggest symphonic jazz band. So that was his career. And he's from a gypsy community, and his wagon caught on fire. Funny enough, it was funeral flowers made of celluloid. And it torched over half of his body and ruined his left hand, and he lost the use of all of his fingers except for these two. So you'd think, well, that's the end of his guitar playing career right there. However, he had a comeback, and so this is the moment that after he's been in the hospital for a few years, he comes back to his community. And I guess it was an inspiring moment for me to really work into, and so this is just the paragraph where that happens. So I imagine the band passed desperate glances as one began to pluck the first precarious notes. I imagine the dancers in the audience felt the need to act, like nothing had happened. But I imagine joy like the strongest wind blasting through every chest when Django began to play. That is the feeling of standing still in the passage of time, together. He played and gravity jumped, frightened with ecstasy. He played and the music was more exquisite than anybody's pain could hope to touch. He played and it looked as though in that fury of heart-screaming sound and chording muscles, it was the guitar that played the man rather than the other way around. As if the space surrounding the instrument and anyone within its gravity were possessed with an indomitable passion, as fierce as it was submissive, as chaotic as it was graceful. And just as one could hear these contradictions to the intellect bounding through the music like swallows in a sea gale, they could be seen wringing Django's face into the shapes of both denial and acceptance. Not of the pleasure of the sound, but of the sound of living so near the cusp of being alive, as if the guitar was the only thing that ever spoke, as if the player was the only thing that ever heard.
I think this has been the best open mic ever at Helicon West. Thank you all for coming. Only the best of the best people are here tonight. Ah, I'm in heaven.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. If y'all will put your chair against the wall. Thank you, Weston, for videoing. Weston is so good. He always comes and sets up and videos and takes down. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Good night.